Welcome back to another episode of Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress. I'm so excited today. Here I'm with Brittany and Jen from Sew Expo, and they are here to tell us kind of the history of Sew Expo and then give us a little more information about what you can anticipate for Sew Expo 2024. If you've been on the fence of, buying your ticket and doing the thing, they're here to convince you to go. So both of them are relatively new to working for Sew Expo, but they have a history of attending and just gaining so much out of the classes. So thank you both so much for being here. And this is our first trifecta podcast episode. This is very exciting for me.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it. We're really excited to kind of talk about Sew Expo, dive into the questions that you might have, or if you're on the fence about attending, and kind of give you the background of what we're all about.
Yeah, so let's start there. When did Sew Expo start? And tell us kind of the history of how long you guys have been around. I mean, you're in my neck of the woods, so I feel like I have the upper hand because I know a little bit more about it since it's in my state, but I'll let you take it away to tell the audience all about Sew Expo.
So it's actually a very exciting Sew Expo because it will be our 40th anniversary here in 2024. So it has been going on for 39, going to be 40 years. And the history behind it is it started out with a single woman show, and she decided to kind of create this atmosphere for sew enthusiasts and basically added in the WSU component, which is where Jen and I work from. We work at WSU. And so WSU now manages the Sew Expo. So she kind of stepped back once she kind of got it up and running. And now that we have been able to take over it, I'm not sure exactly how long we've taken over it, but it's been at least 10 to 15 years that we've kind of been and had our hand in it. So
yeah, and that's as long as I've been aware of it. So
yeah, we are now fully taking over it, and we put on every aspect of the entire show.
Wow, because it's a huge undertaking. I mean, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Sew Expo, it's held at our state fairgrounds, which, I mean, it's not like the Minnesota State Fair. Have you ever been to the Minnesota State Fair? It's like my husband's from Minnesota, so it's like when you need to get like a pass, like to go multiple days because it is huge, and it's like people plan weddings around the state fair, so it can be part of the wedding festivities. I mean, it's like a really big deal. So, I mean, our state fair isn't necessarily like Minnesota level, but we have a really decent sized state fairgrounds, and that's where the Sew Expo is held. So you just picture a huge fairground filled with like all these little sewing nerds, and it's like a sewist dream. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So how did you both like personally get involved with Sew Expo?
So I started with Sew Expo. Well, actually, I work for WSU in our professional education department. So we oversee lots of conferences ranging from, engineer conferences to now sewing conferences. We have a lot of variety that we manage. And so I started last October, right before Sew Expo takes place the 9th weekend of every year. So I took over that and was kind of shadowing someone who had been doing the Sew Expo for 15 years plus, and I was able to kind of follow her along and see what she does. And now I am our show manager for 2024.
Wow. And do you have any, because it sounds like you're just running so much of the back end. Do you have your own like interest in sewing, or do you feel like we could sway you to like the sewist side after being part of our world?
So I rely heavily on Jen, and I also have an amazing event coordinator that are my sewist side of things. They help me with all the lingo and all of the professional side of that. So yeah, I'm the event minded aspect of the sewing industry. So yes, I do appreciate it, which is important, and I think it's hard, and that's why I don't dabble in it. So I leave that to
convert you.
another expert.
Yeah, sooner or later we'll get you like a quilting. Yeah, guide.
We'll work on her.
Jen, what about you?
So I was an attendee for a lot of years. I started sewing when my daughter was born in 2010, and so I attended the expo for several years, and then I found out about the education manager role and started talking to them about it. And I started in this role a week before Sew Expo this year. So,
oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, at least I got to shadow the person that was retiring, the education manager that was retiring. So
yeah. And I'm sure you had like a totally different experience because like as an attendee, you're not showing up as like, just a guest, like you're paying attention to all the behind the scenes things and probably appreciating so much more like the work that goes into this huge event. So
there's a ton of work that goes into it that you really don't notice as an attendee.
mhm.
But I am really glad that I have that history as an attendee, because it helps me in deciding what we should do and what we shouldn't do for
Yeah.
classes and whatnot this year.
Yeah. It gives you so much more of an appreciation of like who your guests are and who you're serving. So
Yeah.
when it comes to like booking your vendors and your classes, I mean, I'm sure you are like inundated with applications and interest. And how do you go about planning a full schedule that appeals to all different sewists? Because we're talking about like okay, garment construction and quilting and like sewing for crafts. And it just there's this huge spectrum of like sewists or sewing enthusiasts. So how do you go about building a calendar that like suits everybody?
Well, it takes a long time, but I purposely went through, and Brittany and our event coordinator, we all went through all the applications together, really focusing on making sure that we have all the different pieces covered, because in years past, we got feedback that it was too quilting focused. And so we wanted to make sure we broadened away from that, not away from that, but make sure we had plenty that's non-quilting focused, and then
Yeah.
also bring in more hand stitching. So I focused heavily on adding more hands-on classes that don't involve machines this year,
Oh, that's cool.
and fitting classes and that and whatnot. So wanted to make sure that we're, providing everything: home decor, crafts. This year we're adding beginner machines or beginner classes using beginner
Oh,
machines.
cool.
And
Okay.
so the projects in those classrooms are going to be obviously beginner focused, but also small, because they're hour and a half long classes, mainly for people to just dip their toes in and see someone like
Yeah.
Brittany.
Exactly. Brittany, you can like make a pillowcase at the Sew Expo and walk
Yeah.
away feeling like you've achieved something. Well, I love that because, I think that could be really intimidating for somebody looking at your class schedule and thinking, okay, I know how to like needle my or thread my needle, but like that's about it, or like sew on a button. So I love that
Yeah.
and I think that is relatively new because I don't remember like easy classes, or
Yeah.
beginner classes being
Yeah. I mean, they've
scheduled.
already always had beginner classes, but they were 2.5 hours, and they were, the 3 needle, and and we still have those. So, for someone that's more confident and ready to do that, those are obvious, we're still going to have those, but the 2 needle hour and a half beginner classes will be quick projects, like a heat bag that you can heat in the microwave and put it on your neck or whatnot.
Mhm.
And then also just a little zipper pouch, trying to remember off the top of my
Brittany,
head
if you
what
can
the
learn
others
to
are.
like put in a zipper in one of these beginner classes, like you've got it made. So
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to jump into one of the class. I mean, I probably won't have any time, but they all look so interesting. I feel like I'm like, okay, I could accomplish this. I could maybe make a bag.
I can make a heat wrap. Okay. That's so fun. I'm already getting so excited. What do you think sets your Sew Expo apart? Because obviously there's different events around the country that gather sewists, but like yours is so huge. And some people make this like an annual event where they like book their flights, they, get their hotel, they make it this, annual pilgrimage. So what do you think sets your event apart?
Think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. Is a lot of the people make it their annual trip together.
Mhm.
They meet people, or they have met people from years past, and they plan this event together. And they love getting to go and physically see fabrics, physically see the things and products that they're shopping for online. It's a lot
Mhm.
different. There's some industries that they can thrive online and they don't need the in-person aspect of it. But I think we've really realized that with this unique audience, they do. They need that in
Right.
person. They want to
Like touch
touch the
stuff.
different. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. They want to touch the fabrics. They want to see everything. And we try really hard to kind of, just like our classes, we try really hard with our vendors, our vendor booths, to kind of bring an array of different
Mhm.
things that might appeal to all types of audiences. So we're not just focusing on quilters, we're not just focusing on sews, we're focusing on kind of everyone in that
Mhm.
market. So I think that's kind of what makes it unique. And, for years and years, they've had vendors that have come with so many different items that you can't purchase online. And so that's kind of the unique aspect of it.
Oh yeah. And I'm excited to
Yeah.
like play with machines, like make my wish list. But it that totally makes sense of like thinking, okay, the fabric is fun to play with, and then I can look at machines, and then you have your accessories. And So Expo's Instagram has been great at like sharing all of their vendors. And so I've been going through and I'm like, okay, I want to check these people out, or just different textile artists that like aren't necessarily, like you said, like quilting fabrics and not necessarily garment fabrics, but just cool, interesting things that you don't even know what you're looking for until you see it, you know?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, what else makes this event something to come back to? It's more than just the classes. And maybe, like, Jen, you said that you've been an attendee. Is there something that just sticks out, like little special details? I mean, we know everything is in the details, right? Of that. That's what like draws people in or sets things apart. So, what are some details that are not necessarily classes that stuck out to you as an attendee and you want to like preserve now since you're planning it?
I think it's an experience, it's at the fairgrounds, like you said, and it's in Puyallup. So it's not in Seattle, it's not in Tacoma, it's not, one of the bigger cities. So there's that nice kind of small town feel, and you can stay in hotels really close by, like even walking distance, or there's a lot of Airbnbs nearby. It's just, Puyallup's a fun little town, and
Great restaurants. Yeah. Some good
yeah,
food.
and there were a couple years when I was an attendee that we even brought my motorhome down, and a couple of friends and I stayed in the motorhome and spent the whole weekend there so that we could do the early classes without having to drive. Yeah, when you said sewing nerds earlier, that really hit home.
You're a sewing nerd if you bring the RV to the Sew Expo and you park
Yep.
it for a week. Oh, that's awesome. See, these are the things that Brittany has to look forward to. Just camping out in the RV, dedicating yourself to the craft. Are there like swag bags or grab bags, or what are perks of registering? I love those things. And I love like the free pens, the stickers. I love all those things. Do we get those?
We do get those, and especially for 2024, if you've never been, this is the year to go, because there's going to be even more little special giveaways and things that we haven't done in years past, because of course we're celebrating a big year.
Yeah.
40 years is a long time, and so we are trying to remember the past and also kind of push forward towards the present. So we always have bags at entry. So you'll get a bag at entry. It has our map. So nothing crazy inside there, but we will have some giveaways throughout the entire Sew Expo that you can grab, some different buttons, pins, pens, notepads, things like that you can grab if you
Oh, I
take
love those things.
classes. Yes.
Yes,
So
I love
little
those
things
things.
here and there. And then of course, since we have our 40th anniversary, we are throwing a big bash on Saturday evening. And so that will be free to attend, which is going to be really exciting. Something that we
fun.
haven't done in the past. We usually do Friday night event and a Saturday night event that are ticketed. So this year it will be free to attend, which we feel like is there's even more of cause celebration.
Yeah. Oh, that is so
We're hoping to
cool.
get a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like you're doing anything different to reach, because you said like remembering the past and moving forward, and obviously, we're reaching a new generation of sewists, and that's kind of what I want to do with this podcast too, is just kind of reach our next generation. And I know sometimes we have to get creative with how we do that. So especially like the older I get, I'm like, wow, I really have to think about this. But like, what kind of things did you have to consider as you're like just thinking of the next generation of sewists, or how to include them, or how to get them excited about stuff that we already love,
Well, we did kind of think about that, especially with planning classes as well, because, a lot of stuff is on YouTube these
Hmm.
days. I mean, if I wanted to go and find out how to start sewing, I could just look up
Yep.
something on YouTube. So we wanted to make these classes unique, something that you couldn't get if you just looked on Google or on YouTube or some of those places online. So you get that in-person aspect. And then we're trying to really force social media and kind of go that route, because we know that's where our new audience will lie.
Mhm.
And a lot of the TikTok and all of that is where we're trying to find unique people and target them with some of our ads to try to draw in a different crowd. We know that,
Yep.
of course, we don't want to just forget about the past and forget about all the people that have attended Sew Expo for these 39 years, but we do also want to try to draw in a new audience and be able to give them what they want or what they need. And we don't know exactly what that is yet, maybe, but we're kind of starting to dip our toes into that audience.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think it's what you're doing is you're like sharing with other people, like, hey, this is why we love to do what we do. Like, this is a joy. Our craft isn't just something for like older people. It's like there's a reason why we love it. And so I think that's great. Like, you just want to share, yeah, the spark of sewing. Like, because once you get it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is cool. Like, I can make stuff, I can make little presents, or I can like make my own clothes. And I think once people realize like it's definitely more accessible maybe than we have in our heads. We can all sew. And like I forget which one of you had mentioned that you're doing some like hand stitching classes. Like, okay, you don't need to invest in the equipment. You can just start with your needle and thread or do some needlework or whatever and make your cute project. So that
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that this is on your mind, is like how to get the younger people into what we love. So that's awesome.
And every year we try to keep the class catalog, pretty diverse. So some
Mhm.
home decor, some garment sewing, some actual fitted garments, but also knit.
Mhm.
We have the serger classes now, which are somewhat new, and all the hand stitching. We're bringing in different vendors we even have someone coming in from Africa this year.
Wow.
Yeah, teaching a class. So just keeping the class catalog really diverse for
Mhm.
people that do have different interests. I know after I had attended for several years, I felt like I had done a lot of the classes. And so I started seeking out specifically new skills that I hadn't
Mhm.
tried before, because I felt like I had taken the classes. I wanted to hone the skills I had already.
Yeah.
So then I started seeking out. So, maybe if someone's been doing garment sewing and now they want to get into home decor,
Yeah.
this might be
Yeah.
the year. We have a couple of fun classes on home decor, and then a lot of fitting classes and whatnot. So to
Oh,
really take
cool.
sewing to the next level, it's one thing to do a fun t-shirt or something, which I love. I love doing knit garments all the time. But I also took a fitting class and got it fitted, got a pattern fitted just for me. And so it's really fun
That's
to wear that
awesome.
shirt that I did in that class because it fits my body perfectly, because it
Mhm.
was literally
Yeah.
made for me
Yeah.
by me. So
And I think like going back to what you said about like finding like sewists on TikTok, whatever, there are so many, TikTok celebrities who are famous now for like going to Goodwill and buying stuff that's like too big, and then they tailor it to themselves. And it's like, that's becoming a common interest. And so it's like, here's how to do that. Like that
yeah,
draws in a huge
yeah.
audience in itself.
Yeah, we have several upcycling classes similar to
Cool.
what you're talking about there. We have taking old shirts and making them into a t-shirt quilt, and
Which are harder than you think.
are harder than you think.
Because the whole like getting the right shape, and I used to make quilts like before I got into bridal sewing. I did like custom quilts, and the t-shirt quilts I remember thinking like every time I made one, oh yeah, that'll be easy. But it's like you have to get the squares right, and then if the squares aren't the same size, you have to like find the border, and then you have to use the interfacing and and then you don't want to peel
Yeah,
off. It's like this whole thing. So
right.
great that you're having a class on that.
Yeah. And another similar technique to that is someone's coming in to talk about printing on fabric. Actually, we have a couple different classes
Ooh,
about
cool.
printing on fabric. And so then you can print pictures on fabric and turn them into a quilt just like that. So there's different classes that you can take the different skill sets and then put them all together into one cohesive project.
That's
So
really fun. Do you have, because I know you said you've been going for years, like, do you have a specific class that stands out as being one that like just was like in your top three or like changed your sewing experience?
I don't know that I have a specific class, but I know that I was really scared to try sergers
Or
before I took
thread
a
them?
class at Expo
Yeah.
and thread them. So I probably wouldn't have ventured into that world if it hadn't been for Sew Expo.
Mhm.
So and that's what I make all my own, not all my own, sorry. I make a lot of my own shirts and sweaters and sweatshirts and whatnot now because I love that. So
That's so cool. Who's your favorite
yeah.
pattern maker? We're totally nerding out here. So do you have a favorite pattern maker, or is it you? Do you know how to make them now? And you're the
No,
pattern.
I wish I did.
I know
Wish I
too.
did. I've gotten kind of into the indie scene. So a lot
Mhm.
of the online pattern makers, Patterns for Pirates, Made for Mermaids.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, we actually have a teacher coming in from Made for Mermaids this year. So
Oh my
um
goodness. I
yeah.
feel like I'm
Actually
meeting a celebrity.
she was there last year as well. So
Very cool. I like there's a Grain Line Studio sweatshirt that I've made like three of, because now I'm like, okay, now I know that I need to give myself a little more, leeway here and there. And it's like you find the patterns that you love or the pattern designers and you just kind of stick with them, and then you know your size with them, or like
yeah,
where to give yourself extra room. So that's really fun.
exactly.
And the
Exactly.
serger thing, oh, that was a game changer too. Because I remember when I
Yeah.
bought one, and then it stayed in the box for a year because I was afraid to thread it. And it's like, okay. And then it took my sister-in-law coming out. Hello, Jessica, if you're listening. She came out to visit me, and I had threaded it wrong. And that was like I died inside and I never busted up. And then she rethreaded it and I was like, okay, it does work. Cause I was like, I think they sent me a broken one and this whole thing. So the fact that you have a class dedicated to sergers, or sounds like multiple classes for
Multiple,
serging,
yeah.
that's great.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
empowering.
And all the machine vendors will have sergers there, and they will
Ooh,
be
fun.
happy to demo threading on any and all of the sergers that they're trying
Okay.
to sell there. So
Cool. And
yeah.
an industrial serger is on my wish list. Like I don't need it, but it is something that I'm like, well, it would be a tax write-off. So, so that's what other things can we buy? Let's talk about what we can
Yeah.
buy. So we already mentioned fabric. So there's gonna be like a ton of different fabrics available to, like you said, like touch and look at in person, all those things. But what else can we spend money on here?
Lots of things you can spend money on. So notions, fabrics, of course, we've got machines, just like Jen mentioned. We will have a lot of machines out there and they do a great job at demoing things. I've even demoed a couple of machines, and the ones that do it themselves and you don't have to touch them, those are my speed. So there's a couple of different companies that are going to be bringing machines and such in. And then we also have, of course, quilts and quilt patterns. And we have a really cool Strapworks is one of the companies that was here last year that actually did amazing. So they sell straps, got bags, different leather and different kind of mediums that you can kind of dive into. So we've got a lot of different things that you can kind of dive into, and we're not just focusing on one thing. We do have, of course, quilting is important, and we know that we have a lot of quilters. And for me, I have tried quilting before, so it's easy for the beginners, but we also have a lot of other variety.
That's awesome. Got to start saving up.
Yeah, there's minky fabric, there's cork fabric, there's vinyl, there's the coated fabric to make bags out of. Yeah, a lot of notions. And then a lot of, we'll have a French European there doing the dress forms again, all kinds
I
of
like
stuff.
the notions, those are the things
Projectors.
that I'm like, I didn't think I needed this, but now I do. Or it's like, oh, it's so cute. Those are the things that suck my money too. It's all the cute things. So how long, Jen, had you been sewing? You said like most of your life, or no, 2010. So when you had, it wasn't your life, it was your children's lives. That's what was in my head when the children were born. Did you just want to start like making clothes or things for them? Or was it like a hobby you were home with them, or?
No, I just wanted to be able to make something for her. I did jewelry making and crafting before, but can't really do that for a baby or a toddler.
Right.
And so I wanted to do that. And I tried to learn to knit and crochet, but I didn't do so well. So I went on to sewing and took it up, and I loved it. And it's what brings me my happy now. So I had learned to sew in the past. I'm quite short. And so I learned to sew in high school to hem all my own pants. Now hemming pants is one of my least favorite things. Right. And so I purposely am bringing in a class on hemming jeans this year. So I learned a long time ago, but yeah, it was really having a child that made me want to go.
Yeah.
All the fun things I can sew for her.
Yes. And did you find like a sewing community, or who kind of helped you, and who introduced you to Sew Expo? That's kind of, I guess, where I'm going with this is like, I'm thinking of people who are just kind of interested in sewing, they're listening to a podcast thinking maybe I could make money with sewing. And then they're hearing like, oh, there's a Sew Expo, but is that even for me? And so what led you to just finding this, I guess, event? And did you already have like friends who sewed, or did you go solo? Or
it was probably my mom that convinced me to go to the Sew Expo the first time, because she had been sewing off and on my whole life. And so I know the first time I went, I didn't take any classes. We just walked around the vendor floor, and
oh wow,
and that's when I kind of got excited. And then the next year, I think I took every one needle I possibly could, which are the lecture demo classes. Although we do have a couple hands-on one needles this year for embroidery.
Cool.
And embroidery. And then like the next year, so that would have been, I guess, my third year going, then I actually ventured into the harder classes, or the more advanced classes, and got brave enough to actually take a machine class and a machine embroidery class. And so it kind of was an evolution.
That's evolution. How we can kind of get more into registration later, but is there a difference in price between obviously just checking out the vendors and then going to classes? What's the cost discrepancy there?
So there's a gate admission fee for, you can do one day or multiple days or a 4-day. We do have classes on Wednesday, but there's no vendor floor open that day. So the 5th day is just classes. And then you go through our catalog, which registration will go live on January 16th.
Okay.
So you can then go through the list of classes and figure out what classes you want to take each day. We have over 200 unique classes, ranging from the 1 needles like we were talking about, which are 45 minutes, 2 needles are an hour and a half, 3 needles are 2.5 hours, and 4 needles are 4 hours. And those
What eat during the 4, like, do you bring snacks? That just sounds like, do you have like potty breaks in there? I cannot imagine. How? Yeah, but that is
Yeah,
like, what are you making in the 4-hour classes? That is so intense.
there's a little bit of everything. So a lot of those are fitting classes. So those don't even have a machine, but there's a raglan shirt one. There's leggings. There's,
Ooh, leggings.
I should have had the catalog up in front of me.
Now I'm
Lots
getting
of
excited. So I'm like, what am I going to register for? So that's kind of what I want the preview for.
yeah, there's a vintage skirt.
Oh, I
Yeah,
could see
all
that taking a long
kinds of-
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because classes where you actually have to cut out a pattern in your size and then cut out the fabric and then
Oh,
sew it
yeah.
together. We've had several instructors ask us why we don't offer full day classes, which would be 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, because I'd love
Because-
to make a pair of jeans. That's on my bucket
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, I remember, well, this is before the pandemic. There was a shop up in Seattle that would offer, like, you walk away with a pair of jeans, and it was like an all day event. And so I
Yeah.
remember thinking like, oh, I want to sign up for that. And then they haven't opened that up since COVID, but something like that I would love. Like, look what I did today. I made myself a pair of jeans. So that could
Yep.
be, Brittany, that's your job for next year. Get us somebody
Eventually,
to
yes, eventually. I know. Jen was like, next year, all day classes. I'm like, okay, we can do it. Let's do it.
I'll pack my lunch. Okay. Yeah.
After 3 or 4 teachers asked me for that, I'm going, okay, I guess I need to entertain this idea if this
Yeah.
many teachers want it. And other shows do offer it, especially for fitting, because that takes a while because you have to try it, try stuff on, go back and move things around a bit and then try back on. And so it
Yeah.
can take a long time if that's something people are interested in.
Yeah. And I also kind of lit up, I didn't even think about embroidery. Okay, so don't make fun of me, but the only embroidery that I do is like the iron-on kind. So like it's the not Auntie M's. What am I thinking of? Auntie something. Auntie
I'm
Harriet?
not sure.
No. And it comes like in those packets, or like Stitcher's Revolution, and then you iron on the designs. I'm actually working on some of that now for Christmas presents. And I'm so afraid to do any kind of like freehand embroidery because I don't know. I feel like that includes like drawing, and I don't have an eye for that. And so that freaks me out. So when you said embroidery, I'm like, maybe somebody can teach me how to do some like freehand embroidery. So I'm not
Yep.
just doing all the iron on stuff, because I need to branch out.
We have several
Good.
classes on that this year.
Okay, very fun. I know, I can't wait. So you're not sharing the catalog until registration opens?
No, we'll share the catalog beforehand. We actually will,
Okay,
by
good.
the time this has already posted, we will have put out all of our classes, and then we'll have the full catalog before we go live with registrations. So you can plan your classes, you can plan out your schedule, we can show you how to register, and we'll walk you through that. Last year we did a YouTube video. I did it. It was not very great, but this year will be better. So we'll have a YouTube video on how to register, and we'll walk you through step by step of how to register for your 1-day admission, 4-day admission, or class tickets. And then we'll also have the class catalog that we'll have. This year we're bringing it back. So last year we didn't have our full 40-pager, which has all the details that you could ever want. So we're bringing that bad boy back for 2024. Yeah, it's going to be online only, so you'll be able to download it. You can print it if you'd like, but at least you'll be able to kind of, scope out what classes you want to take and build your schedule. So we are excited to have that 2024.
Yeah. Do you anticipate any like fighting to get into a class? Like how many classes are limited, or what type of classes have the most limited amount of seats or whatever? And does that make you nervous?
We always have classes sell out. So I think if you're wanting a class, you definitely, that's why we want to release the catalog so that you can plan ahead of time, because that is it's a very real possibility.
Okay. I'm already getting sweaty.
In the machine classes, we're limited to the number of machines there are.
Okay.
So most of those are, well, we have some rooms that are 18, a couple that are 24, and some up to 30. So that would be the max for those classes. If those classes sell out, especially if they sell out really quickly, we'll look at scheduling another session of the classes that sell out. But yeah, for the most part, we're limited in those classes to how many machines are available.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Absolutely. Okay, well,
Yeah, and
I'm
then
like, okay, I gotta see the list. I gotta
pre-registration
make my list.
Yep.
for the
Yeah.
hands-on classes like the hand embroidery, knitting, crocheting, all the
Mhm.
machine classes, we do recommend pre-registration because, well, one, because they could sell out, but also because there's kits. And so the
Mhm.
teachers need to know how many people to make kits for and make sure they bring
Yeah.
enough kits. So if a class still has availability during the expo, we'll let people, register, but the kits just, there may not be kits available. It
Mhm.
just kind of depends how many kits the teachers bring.
Yeah, you do need to plan ahead. So
Yeah.
that's good to know. It's like you said, you can just kind of like walk in and check it out. But especially if if you're listening and you want to make this pilgrimage to my state, and I'll be there too. I'll be teaching a couple classes. I'm so excited. You got to plan ahead and map out your schedule, which is so exciting. Because then I feel like I'm like back in school, which I love that feeling. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, all right. So what is in the future for Sew Expo after you get through? Because is this your first year working together on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So once this is under your belt and like you get in a groove, what would you love to see for Sew Expo like in the next 5 years? Where do you want to see this going?
Course we want to get bigger, and again we kind of want to dive into some of those younger sewists. We're hoping to kind of target a little bit of a different audience. We know a lot of people go to Comic-Con, they create
Mhm.
costumes for that, so we'd love to be able to also bring that into the fold in some aspect. That has been a goal for a little bit of time. We do end up always kind of running in the same time as Comic-Con Emerald City,
Mhm.
so that is a little bit of a wrench in our plans, but we would love to kind of fold that into the Sew Expo in the future. And of
Okay.
course, continue to bring vendors in that, we can have people physically see the products in person. So of course, growing that. And then Jen, of course, growing the classes and doing all day classes all week. No, I'm just
Week long class. Yeah,
yeah.
what could we make with that? You could like design your own line or something. Yeah.
I know
That sounds
there's several
fun.
teachers that teach, like we have a sewing with silk class, and then we have a more sewing with silk class. So I think purposely schedule those so you can take the one and then the more sewing after that. And there's like a wallet class where you do a very basic wallet first, and then you can take the other class, which is a more advanced wallet. And so I think that is in the future too, like almost having little series in there so
Yeah.
that people can take as many of those classes as
Hmm.
they want to in a series, or
Yeah.
come back year after year and learn the next level of
Mhm.
skill depending on what type of project it is.
Yeah, especially if you're seeing, like you said, you had gone through most of the classes of interest and you're seeing like repeat customers. So it's like, how do you make their experience even bigger and better while also catering to like the new sewists? And I mean, that's a huge job. So I don't envy you, but I'm really excited for even I think just this season alone, I've noticed like, oh, I'm hearing about Sew Expo more, or I'm like seeing it more, so that's exciting for me. It's not, I remember when before I became like a professional sewist, I used to be a middle school teacher. And I remember some of my teacher friends would go to Sew Expo and I was like, what was that? Like I'd never heard of it. And so now it's like, okay. And I know obviously I'm in the sewing world, so I hear about it now, but it's just popping up on social media more, or I'm like hearing about it. So you guys are doing really great work to get the word out. Do you have any other, like I have my membership for bridal seamstresses. Do you have a little cohort of other Sew Expo leaders around the country, who are planning their own events
Our
that you can share ideas with?
We have our clothing and textile advisors, which are CTAs, and they are our volunteers that help out actually at Sew Expo. So you'll see them if you're there.
Mhm.
They're at all of our classes helping out, and they are amazing, amazing volunteers. So if that's something that someone's interested in, they have different chapters kind of all over, and you can
Oh, can you say that
volunteer
name
with
again?
them for the clothing and textile advisors,
That would be
CTAs.
so fun
And
because
so if
you
you're interested, you can reach out to us too, and we can kind of put you in contact with them. But they're a great group.
yeah, because I can imagine that you want to stay current with what's happening around the country, or like you want to kind of stay on top of things. And so kind of have to be in the know of what other people are doing, in the midst of having your head down and just planning your own huge event. You got to like think about other things that are happening around the country.
Yep, yep.
Right.
And they're a great group. And we also are planning this year we had our Sew Summer series, which was a fully virtual series, but we are hoping to do maybe a monthly series
Oh,
next
cool.
year, which would be fully virtual online. We do get asked that every single year if we
Hmm.
have virtual classes. And then unfortunately, having a hybrid model for Sew Expo is just not something that
Oh,
is
yeah.
probably feasible just because of you know, all the added AD. But we are proud to offer that virtual component for people that aren't able to attend in person. So we're hoping to do a monthly series next year. More to come on that. But
Mhm.
yes, that's our goal.
That's
Yeah.
so exciting. Yeah. And then you're building the community throughout the year. So it builds the hype more like, okay, like then once you're all going to get together and we'll do these things in person, but it just keeps that connection going for the other 11 months of the year, you know?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
okay, registration opens January 16th, and then you're going to get the catalog. Remind me of that date when the catalog drops.
So we're hoping to drop it before the end of the year. So
Oh,
it
okay.
hopefully will drop in December, but if not, it will definitely be before registration opens. So
Okay.
at least a week before registration opens that you're able to plan.
Very exciting. And then we've been talking about when registration is, but I don't think we've ever actually said the dates of Sew Expo. So remind me of the dates of that.
Yes, that would be important. So we are
What is this thing?
so February 29th to March 3rd is the Sew Expo. That includes the vendors and classes, but we will have, like we mentioned, those 4 needle classes and some of those longer classes on the 28th, which is the day before.
Okay.
So if you come on the 28th, you're only attending those classes. You're not getting to see the vendor floor. You don't have to purchase a day pass. That is only starting February 29th to March 3rd.
It's like the serious attendees are showing up on the 28th, those 4 needle
Yes.
people. Yeah. So if you're listening, you have time to to get a flight, to plan your road trip, to get your ticket, and you won't be the only one traveling from around the country, or it sounds like you have somebody from Africa, so around the world to attend this event. So, and it's worth it. I mean, you're inundated with education and new opportunities and new products to buy and just new ideas. Like it's just this creative surge. So it's so exciting. And I'm really proud that it's in our state. So thanks for
Yeah.
hosting. Okay, we'll have all of this information in our show notes. And is it okay? Who would be the contact person if somebody has a specific question? Do you have like a Q&A page, or where should we send people if they have some questions?
Yeah, so we have our frequently asked questions updated on our Sew Expo website, which is sewexpo.com. And that has all your frequently asked questions. You can also email us at sewexpo@wcu.edu, and I'll pass that along so you can put that in the show notes as
Yeah.
well. But those are if you have any extra questions that aren't up on the website. But we do a pretty good job at explaining even accommodations, how to get to the fairgrounds, those type of questions that you might have. That's all on our website.
And if you have other questions, maybe that I could answer, you can message me too, or maybe I'll just pass you onto the website. Honestly, I don't know. But if you're coming, let me know because I'd want to make sure that I meet you there. So that is for our listeners. Okay. Thank you both so much for your time. And thank you for all the work that you do throughout the year to plan this huge event for our sewing community. We really appreciate it. And I can't wait to meet you in person. Yay.
Thanks for having us.
Can't wait to meet you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And if you're feeling really generous, leave a review. Thanks, everyone.